Hi, Peter Charles here of Photo for Life Photography, and today we're going to take a look at my Fujifilm X-Pro3. Now, I've had this camera for about 2 years now and had a lot of chances to, use it in a variety of situations with a variety of lenses. And I've come to learn the good, the bad, and the ugly about this camera. And I think hopefully this review will help you make up your mind whether you want to go out and pick one up or maybe an X-Pro2 instead. This camera does have some quirky features, which I kind of like. Other people don't like it. Well, that's personal taste. I'm not going to get into a specification review. There's plenty of other websites and YouTube videos and that have all the specification information. I'm going to be looking at this from an enthusiast point of view, not a pro's point of view. So let's get on with the good stuff first. Now, I love the form factor of this camera. The optical viewfinder, which is a hybrid viewfinder. You can switch it between optical and electronic viewfinder, which is just great. Depends on the lens you're using. We'll talk about the limitations of the optical viewfinder in a few minutes, but the fact that you have it is kind of cool, especially when you're in lighting conditions that make the use of the electronic viewfinder a bit more challenging. And here's the switch that allows you to pivot from one to the other. And it has the manual, continuous, and single shot focusing lever right here, which I prefer over menu diving to find that adjustment. I much prefer to have it on the body. And then we have a front dial as well if we want to use it. I tend not to use it, but it's there if you want to use it. The control layout in the back is quite simple. As you can see, we've got just menu, play, and display. A Q button here is a bad location. And this will be one of the bad things, even though we're in the good section right now. I moved it to this top plate button here. It's much easier to get at. What I found is I was continually popping up the Q menu when I was holding the camera, which got to be a real nuisance. I don't think that location is quite good. You have another function button right here that you can use to set something up as well. But again, I don't like that location right on this thumb rest here. You have a chance of hitting it accidentally. You got a joystick, which is great. These buttons are in good position, but it's a nice, simple layout. It's an uncluttered layout, which is nice. And of course, you have the viewfinder sensor here, which lets you know whether if you bring your eye to it, it turns the viewfinder on. If you bring your eye away from it, you get the screen. Now onto the screen. I happen to like it. It has this little touch here that, in the old film days, we used to take our cover off of our film boxes and slide it in a holder so we know what kind of film we had in the camera. So that duplicates that. If I change that to another type of film simulation, that will change, which is nice. Is it necessary? No, it's just kind of a cute feature. The idea behind this camera, by the way, is for it to look and act like an old film camera. So that's why Fujifilm engineers did this kind of work on it and how they designed it. Now, it has a flip down screen, which is a bit of a nuisance for some people. I'm used to it. I don't mind it at all, to tell you the truth. But I know a lot of people who don't like this screen. For me, it's actually kind of cool because I'm not one to always constantly chimp, and always look. And that's the purpose of this screen, is to make you use the viewfinder, to make you compose the shot and not continually worry about, let me check this, let me check that. Get involved in the shooting experience rather than mess around like always checking. So that's kind of like the idea behind that screen, to make it a little bit inconvenient to use so you don't continually use it. So, some people like it, some people don't. I'm in the like variety. I find it's quite easy if you're in electronic viewfinder mode to actually change the menu settings in the viewfinder because you have the joystick to use, which is cool. So I don't have any problem with that. Now, I've already mentioned one of the bad things, which for me, which is the Q button location. Now, this is a problem for other people, not me. If you want to change the ISO, you have to pick up the dial, and you see it drops back down. So if you keep changing the ISO, you have to keep picking up and putting it down. A lot of people whine about that. I mean, give me a break. It's not that big a deal. I mean, I came out of the old film days. I mean, I got my first adjustable camera in 1969. I mean, I'm used to fiddly stuff, so this doesn't bother me in the least, but it bothers some people. In the X-Pro3, if you pick it up, it stays up, and then you can turn it as much as you want, then you push it back down, which a lot of people prefer. I don't care, okay? So the other thing which we'll say in the bad is a lot of people don't like the screen. Okay, for me, the one bad thing that I don't like was the Q location. The other thing, let's get to the viewfinder. You know, this is a big problem for me. The X-Pro1 and the X-Pro2 had a 2 magnification viewfinder. So what that meant was if you transition from this 35 to this 50, it would adjust the frame lines, or 23 to 50 would be a better example. It would adjust the frame lines so you don't end up with this little tiny box in the middle of the frame if you're using a 50. So right now, if I use this 50 with the optical viewfinder, I'm using a little tiny section of the viewfinder like that. Whereas in the old X-Pro2 and X-Pro1, you got a second magnification which brought up the size of the viewfinder frame lines. Now, I used to have on my old X-Pro1, I used to have a Voigtlander 25 f4 and a 40mm f1.4, which I use for my street photography, and I had that on the Fujifilm M-mount adapter. And it was very easy to change the focal length of the lens in the menu through that adapter. As a result, my frame lines were basically the same size for the 40 and the 25. It was great. I never really had to adjust. And one of the nice things about using that X-Pro1 was that ability to keep those two lenses with the same viewing area when I looked through the viewfinder. Superb. Loved it. We've lost that in the X-Pro3, and that's bad. And I think the magnification of this viewfinder could be higher. It seems to me that Fujifilm is deliberately dumbing down the optical viewfinder to get people to use an electronic viewfinder more. I don't know where they're going with that, whether the X-Pro4, if they ever come out with one, will be dumbed down even more. But it shows you that they're pushing towards the EVF as being the better solution. So us old guys who like the optical viewfinder are having less of a good experience with the X-Pro3. Another minor thing is if you open up this door, there's no HDMI port, okay? There's just a USB and a remote. Oh, I do shoot video, as you can see. And I was planning to use this in my studio. I didn't realize it didn't have an HDMI port. Surprise, surprise, when I flipped the door open and found out there wasn't one. So, it probably cost Fujifilm more money to leave it off, considering all the other cameras they have the HDMI port on, so they have to make a special effort to leave it off. So I don't think it saved any money. It might have cost money to do it. But I understand Fujifilm's rationale was they want to make this a still photographer experience. And so everything's pushed towards an old film camera. And so you get that feel, and I guess they figured the HDMI port would never be used. I would have used it. So guys, can you put it back in the X-Pro4? Now on to the ugly. And this is not a problem for me. I've never had this problem. But if you've read the literature on out there, you'll know that people complain about this ribbon breaking or tearing. And if you hold your, go about this far with your screen or maybe a little bit further, you're not going to have any problems with that ribbon. All right? It's the people that crank it all the way down, because it will go straight down. If you crank it all the way down, you're putting that ribbon under tension. All right, so basically what I normally do is I normally just have it halfway. And that's my normal position, is this halfway. And when it's halfway like that, I don't really have a problem with it. I've never had any issue with that ribbon, and I don't think you ever will. When you read the comments that people put online about this ribbon, it basically boils down to a few people have had it tear and most don't. So if you're not constantly yanking that screen all the way down to the bottom, you're not going to break that ribbon. I mean, I've been using this camera quite a bit. That screen's been open quite a lot, and as you can see, there is no problem with that ribbon whatsoever. It's in great shape. So really, it's just a matter of don't crank it all the way down, and you won't have any problems with the ribbon. As I say, halfway, nice and safe. The ribbon's not tight, as you can see. That's got lots of room. It's not being stretched. So, and also makes a great waist level viewfinder when you hold it like that. It's like having an old TLR. So that's basically my experience. Do I enjoy using this camera? I almost said fishing this camera. That's what happens when you have a fishing YouTube channel as well. Do I enjoy shooting with this camera? Oh yeah, do I ever. I love it. It's probably this and the X100V are the two cameras I use the most for still photography. I mean, I have 3 other cameras, an XS10 above my head, there's an XT2 in front of me, and there's an XH2 upstairs. I mean, I have choice, lots of choice. And it's this one and the X100V that get all of the use for still photography. And when I'm using lenses that are longer or wider than comfortable, yeah, then I'll use the EVF. So as a round, wrap up on the viewfinder, if you're going to use something like a 23, a 27, a 35, you're fine with the viewfinder. If you're using like an 18 or a 16 or a 50, not so great. You lose your frame lines for the 18, and the old ones we had frame lines for the 18, now they're gone. So, and the 16, forget about it. So if you're going to use this camera and you want to use it with the optical viewfinder, think in terms of the 23, the 27, and 35 lenses. 50, you're pushing your luck with the frame lines because they get so small, and at the other end, you don't have frame lines. So there you go. It's a great camera used within the context of its design, and I don't use it as a sports camera. It'd be awful as a sports camera, but for portraits, landscapes, street, all that kind of photography, perfect, lovely. And I really, really, really enjoy using it. It's usually this and the, if I need adjustable lenses, change the lenses, I'll take this one, and if I just need the 23, I'll take the X100V with me. I'm grabbing one of these 2 cameras every time I need to take still photo. And I only use the other cameras either for video, or in the case of the XH2, I use it for bird photography and stuff like that. But, for my general purpose photography, it's this. So if you're looking to buy one of these cameras, and, we're not sure when the X-Pro3 will ever come out, if there will be one, and you want to make a choice between the 1, 2, and the 3, I would say forget about the 1 unless you want it real cheap, because the viewfinder wasn't that great in electronic mode, and it had some other issues. Minor in performance compared to this modern camera, the autofocus was awful. The X-Pro2 is basically an X-Pro1 that's been significantly improved. So the autofocus is better, the viewfinders are the same, the EVF I believe is better. So, and it has a conventional fixed screen. So this screen here is fixed and it faces you just like the X-Pro1. So if this screen bugs you and the lack of the change in magnification of the optical viewfinder bugs you, then you're probably better off with the X-Pro2. If these features, if the optical viewfinder is not an issue for you and you don't mind that flippy screen, then I would say the X-Pro3 is a better choice. You're going from a 24 megapixel camera to a 26 megapixel camera, so the autofocus on this is better. It is the best performance of the autofocus, so if that's important to you, maybe the X-Pro3 would be the better choice. Either way, they're fun cameras to use, and as long as you use them within the context of what the Fujifilm engineers had in mind. If you go beyond that, you're better off with something else. So give that some thought. Cheers.